Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. My name is Darshan Kulkarni. I'm your host. I'm here with guest par excellence, someone who's been with us a few different times. This is the first Darshan Talks in a few weeks, so I'm excited to have him on as our first guest back after a little bit of a break. Our guest today is Ashley Preston. He's the SVP of Global Regulatory Affairs, Quality and Operational Excellence, and he's actually been on several times, talked about every one of these issues. I do have to clarify, he's going to be here in an unofficial capacity. He does not represent the company he works for. I will actually also emphasize the way you can reach him throughout the conversation. But we hope to just discuss things that are of interest, and of specific note is going to be Project Optimus. I've heard a lot about it, and Ashley has been kind enough to say he'll talk a little bit about it. But I also want to talk a little bit about the hiring process right now, because as we all know, it is very, very difficult to find the people you're looking for, and everyone's talking about the Great Resignation. But what does that actually mean at a practical level? So, Ashley, thank you again. Thank you for being here. And how are you doing?
It's a pleasure always to speak with you, Darshan. Yeah, doing well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Let's start with the beginning. Project Optimus. First of all, it sounds like it's something out of what's the movie Optimus Prime?
Transformers, yes.
Transformers, exactly. So it's obviously not about the Transformers, but what is Project Optimus?
I suspect maybe it's designed to transform the way we determine the dose, the therapeutic dose of the medicines that we're bringing to patients. So Project Optimus was announced by FDA, I believe it was late last year, late 2021. And whilst there's not a whole lot of information around it, it is getting airtime in the press, and as well as mentioned at a recent ODAC meeting on the PI3 kinase inhibitors, as well as a lot of folks in the industry certainly talking about it. And it is really designed, as we understand it, to re-envision the way in which we determine the therapeutic dose of medicines to go forward out of phase 1 into phase 2 and 3 particularly. And what FDA have said is that in the oncology space, the way we've traditionally determined the effective dose is by a race to MTD. And that's come from the paradigm of cytotoxic drugs, of course, where you would load up as much as the patient could tolerate of that drug to get the maximal effect. But in the arena of targeted therapies now and non-cytotoxic therapeutics for oncology, that model doesn't necessarily pan out to give the best long-term benefit for patients. And they've also we've seen a lot of dose modification post-market, dose reduction post-market, even to the point where there is some evidence out there, I believe it's in the pancreatic cancer space, where there were superior outcomes based on dose reduction simply because patients were able to stay on therapy for longer, and therefore the totality of their therapy was much longer at the lower dose and led to a better outcome. So I think it's an interesting space that's moving forward and presents some opportunities, but also challenges for companies, particularly small companies, because one of the other elements that Dr. Pazder has talked about for Project Optimus is the potential to bring more than one dose into phase 2 and potentially in randomized studies to really make sure we have a good handle on the dose to move forward to market. So that in itself could present some challenges, but I think by and large, it's designed to ensure that the optimal dose, as the name would suggest, is getting to market for patients.
Which sounds like a great idea, but what I'm wondering is when you start doing that, the first question I have is the idea to reduce cost or increase speed to market as you see it?
I think the idea from FDA's perspective is neither. Is to make sure that we have the best dose that is going to the patients can stay on long term, and reflecting the fact that a lot of targeted therapies are administered daily as opposed to the cytotoxic, which are normally on a more broken schedule, with dose holidays in between. And so the targeted agents that are being taken long term on a daily basis, have a different toxicity profile than cytotoxics, and therefore it might be that a lower dose of a drug taken over a longer period of time that is more tolerable can lead to a better outcome for the patient in the long run. So I'm not sure that it's speeding, increasing the efficiency of getting to market, getting to approval. But I think making sure once drugs are on the market that we're at the right dose and we're not having to then have huge dose adjustments and dose reductions and seeing long-term toxicities cropping up.
So one of the key things, as you know, has been the FDA recently pointing out this idea that they want to work with patient engagement and sort of talk to patients. One of the key pieces that has come out of that has been this idea that patients are saying that we're not looking for necessarily longer lives. We're looking for happier lives. And to me, what I'm really hearing from you as you say this is it's speaking to that goal, which is, yes, we can look at how far we can push the dose, but a smarter way might be quality of life. Is that part of the thought process as far as you can tell? Or is this, again, not necessarily with that viewpoint?
I think it is. I absolutely think it is, because when we think about the long-term toxicity, that the treatment burden on patients, obviously taking a lower dose that is still effective when you're on a chronic therapy, which some cancer treatments are becoming chronic therapies now. I think that makes perfect sense, and I see the parallel in the thinking around Project Optimus coming out of the paradigm around the HIV medicines when they first came out, and the toxicity was any level of toxicity was almost acceptable because of the benefit, and the risk benefit balance there was heavily swayed in favor of the antiviral activity. And so, but as that field evolved, we saw more and more emphasis on long-term safety of HIV medicines, because patients were living longer and being on those medicines for a longer period of time. It becomes a chronic therapy rather than an acute therapy, and therefore you must have a higher safety threshold for patients taking those drugs over a long period of time. And I think to the benefit of patients with targeted therapies, we are seeing that now, and the longer patients are spending on therapy, being able to stay on therapy and have their disease under control, the better to my mind that is.
So it's interesting you drew the parallel to HIV, because that's exactly what I was thinking as you were saying it. And I'm thinking specifically of Magic Johnson. And I think about how at that point HIV was a death sentence, and now we're sort of seeing people live chronically for decades with it. Is this what you think cancer is now evolving into for us as a community, I guess, where we're seeing patients go from 1-year survival to 5-year survival to now long-term survival? And is this part of that process?
I do believe so. I mean, obviously it's tumor dependent. Some are more aggressive than others in that sense, and so the survival is challenging. But as we get better targeted therapies, I think we are seeing lifespans extended. We are seeing 5-year and beyond survival, extending to that point. And so therefore, yeah, absolutely, you would want to have a more tolerable therapy, and if you can afford a lower dose with lower long-term toxicities with the same efficacy, then absolutely, you should go for it.
So that really brings this other question. As you know, the president suggested that he wants to go after that moonshot, and that was around oncology. Do you think that played into this guidance, or do you think they sort of evolved separately?
I think no. I think that the Project Optimus was on the cards from a while back. I think it was announced. I believe it was definitely the second half of last year, maybe around the August-September timeframe. So I think pre kind of cancer moonshot, if you like. And I think it was a recognition by FDA that they were seeing long-term toxicities cropping up in drugs that have been developed using the old model of a race to MTD. And so at MTD, you were getting efficacy, but you're also getting long-term toxicities. And there was an opportunity potentially, or what was happening post-market was that physicians were dose reducing anyway because of those toxicities, but the outcomes for those patients were either equivalent or in some cases superior, and therefore triggering the idea that we need to take a better look at how we determine the effective dose to move forward into phase 3 and onto market.
So that really raises the next question, which is, do you believe that based on what you're seeing with Project Optimus, that's going to have an impact on, like, this obviously would have an impact on clinical development. But do you think it'll have an impact on preclinical in that model drug development, essentially using models? I forget what the term for it is this second. Do you believe that that's going to have to adapt now to this new model by the FDA?
Yes, so model informed drug development.
Thank you, MIDD. Thank you.
Yes, that's the one. So I think that what we see now is that when we go through, first in human dose escalation, and we're looking for, we are looking to escalate the dose to a point, to an MTD. But I think that the package, the decision making package that accompanies that decision for a dose to move forward cannot simply be we reached MTD, therefore we move forward with that dose. It has to be a holistic assessment of exposure response, exposure safety, and that's where I think model-informed drug development can help to supplement and fill out some of the missing pieces in that package without overburdening the clinical study itself or the clinical study requirements. But certainly we're going to see potentially moving forward, if FDA is going to recommend moving forward with multiple doses into phase 2 in a randomized fashion, that would be an increase potentially in the size of the studies that we would be conducting in phase 2. Would have an impact, of course, on industry conducting those studies. But I think it remains to be seen as to how we can work out the most efficient way to do that and end up with an optimal result for both patients and for companies. I think we will have more information going into phase 3 pivotal studies and beyond at that point. So I think it's going to have to be a balance, and it may not always be possible for every drug to take 2 doses forward. One of the important points that's been talked about is that this is not FDA asking us to take forward ineffective doses. I think it's just making sure that if we have 2 doses which are potentially effective, potentially efficacious, and taking forward those 2 doses or the on the lower end of that dose spectrum on the window of the therapeutic index, such that we are able to maintain efficacy but avoid long-term toxicity where possible.
It's interesting. It reminds me of dopamine and dobutamine, and this is going back to my pharmacy knowledge, and I'm kind of thinking a little bit about how in those cases, depending on the dose you use, you get very different pharmacological effects, very, very different physiological effects. I'm wondering that as we start looking at these models and going, let's try 2 different doses, see what happens. What will we start discovering things about these drugs that we simply wouldn't have discovered before, and resulting in more indications and possibly more uses of these drugs, and therefore we go from being single drug, single use to single drug, multiple uses, and therefore decrease drug costs overall, which I think is something that patients are looking for overall. So I'd be curious if you think that's true, or you think that just based on the model that we're using, things like proteins which will only have one impact, one effect, that's unlikely to be the scenario going forward.
I think that's going to be target specific, depending on the distribution of the target and which biological processes you can affect at different doses. Potentially, that's absolutely a potential. Where I see a lot of activity and a lot of future expansion, if you like, beyond what it is now, is in the PD and biomarker arena. Because if you are looking at not just the maximum tolerated dose, you need to have some other measure by which to decide whether or not you are hitting a dose that could be effective. If you're only seeing hints of efficacy, hints of clinical activity, then you're looking for a combination of safety, hints of clinical activity, and PD markers to see that you've got target engagement. So there's going to be an importance on that continuum. Those 3 elements are going to have equal importance now, over and above just simply how much drug can the patients tolerate.
Now, Project Optimus itself, was it always geared towards, like you mentioned, it was out of phase 1 into phase 2 and 3? My question is, will this have an impact on the type of MTD research that we were doing on animals, for example? I think that's obviously decreased a lot over time, but we were looking not just at maximum tolerated dose, we were also looking at just, and I'm blanking again on the term, but essentially what you use to kill at like a certain lethal dose to figure out what the lethal dose was. Is that going to have an impact, you think, or not so much? LD50.
I don't think so much on the LD50 and or the ED50, depending on your what you're looking at. I think what's going to happen is we're going to want to understand more about the activity of the drug at a pharmacologic level. In the preclinical studies to really nail down those other markers, biomarkers or PD markers that can be used. And so that's a lot of that can be well established in the preclinical or non-clinical arena before you move into the clinic. I think that would be an area of focus.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to take this chance to actually pivot a little bit now. So we've talked a little bit about Project Optimus, and it's really quite interesting to see the changes that are happening. But now let's talk a little bit about the changes that are happening at a business level. And what you mentioned to me before we got on is you guys at Syros, is it Syros? Syros. Have just hired some new, really smart people to work with you. But I remember this being a little bit of a challenge. You were trying to find the right people. How has the Great Resignation affected how Syros is choosing the right people?
So the Great Resignation is, it's a tough market to hire, to find great candidates, because there is so much competition now for good people. And so we are really having to emphasize the value proposition as a candidate when we're looking to hire people into Syros, and when we're interviewing people. The candidates are really asking a lot of questions now about the company values, the company culture, the long-term plan for the organization, how our clinical programs are developing, how they're risk mitigated, and so on. So candidates are very very well informed and understand the market very well these days, particularly in the biotech space, of course, and they ask the right questions. And so it's up to the companies to then be ready to answer those questions and to make sure that we can demonstrate to candidates coming in the door that the value proposition we have within the organization and within a team. And so, yeah, absolutely, we've had some success in the hiring space in the last 3 months, and I continue to have the privilege of leading a team of great experts in the regulatory quality and medical writing arena, and we continue to build the team and have fun doing it. So it's a great time, but it's definitely a challenging market for hiring candidates simply because of the competition.
Which to me is kind of great to see individuals signing into a company not only because it pays the way they want it to pay, which is always a good thing, but because they're going, my values align with the company. Has that been a challenge though? Because the more you read about Gen Z, and I think it's now also Gen Alpha, I believe is the next one coming up, but I can't keep track. I don't know if they've been officially named, but whatever. The idea is they're coming on and asking the right questions. They're saying, we want to have our values aligned. But I've also seen companies now have to take a step back and have to explain themselves to their employees. Has that been a struggle though? Or are you guys right at that size where that can still work?
No, we have a great HR team who do a great job of arming us with the material and the speaking points. But not only just speaking points, but we live it at Syros. So we live the values that we talk about. And so we find it reasonably easy to demonstrate that, and we get a lot of feedback from candidates across the board that everyone they speak to, is giving them the same feeling, of camaraderie, the same feeling of openness and engagement and transparency, and everybody at Syros is really really engaged in bringing new medicines to patients and really energetic about our mission. And so I think that's easy enough in itself to sell. We just tell it like it is. Tell them what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we do. But one of the important things that we do at Syros during the hiring process, and this is legitimate, is that we put equal emphasis during the hiring process on what someone knows and what they've done previously, and who they are, what they can bring to the culture of Syros to enrich and to embrace the culture that we're trying to build. And so when we're sitting looking at candidates and deciding whom to make an offer to, we really take those two things into account, and they are equally balanced.
That's so interesting, because that is not a conversation I have been privy to previously. Most people previously used to go, can this person do the job? And what you're saying is there's now a additional analysis of will the person fit into our company when they do the job, i.e., I'm sure they can be the best employee, but will they be the best employee for us is the question you're asking. How do you make that judgment of whether someone's the best employee for you?
I mean, personally, I put it down to the feeling and the rapport that you have when speaking to someone. I feel like I personally feel at ease making an assessment just by speaking to someone. You know when you have that feeling of engagement, and you know you can work with someone, and you click in that way. And so you look for people who have a great set of skills, great experience, and you have that click. And when you have those things come together, then you know you're onto a good thing. And it seems to be panning out for us so far. So it's so far so good.
You know what it reminds me? It reminds me of dating. And I know they always talk about that, but it's not just about is the person good on paper, but is there a spark? And it's impossible to define that spark. And what you're describing is exactly that. Have you had to reject people where they were amazing on paper, and then you were like, they could even be a great employee, but they may not be the right fit for us? And how do you have that discussion?
Yes, absolutely. So that's part of the assessment in terms of the skill set, the experience base, and their the fit for the organization. And typically, it would come down to communication as well. So a lot can be derived from just the communication during interview. You can say the same thing, but if there's not that gel of communication back and forth, then it can be disjointed. It can be challenging, and you can make an assessment. Obviously, not all of our assessments are made across the hiring team, so it's also that enables you to get different perspectives. And sometimes people have an off day or an off interview, and so you're able to circle back around with the hiring team and get their varied perspectives as well. And we arrive at a consensus, and we move forward. So
one of the things that everyone's been struggling with is we've had COVID for the last 2.5 years at this point. And everyone's sort of going, okay, we're now looking to go away from remote, move back towards a semi-remote position. Today's news was an Apple executive resigned because the company was moving towards bringing people back at least for 3 days and potentially for more. First of all, is Cirrus looking to move back in any way, or are you guys a fully remote company? Let's answer that question first.
So our hiring policy is around a hybrid model at its center, and so and we've used that because coming out of COVID, we realized that talent in this industry is distributed across the country, and so you are cutting off your talent supply by being restrictive on geographic location and job style or job being remote or otherwise. So we have local employees who are in the office. We have hybrid employees who are in the office sometimes a certain period per week or per month, and that in itself is quite flexible between the hiring manager and the employee themselves. And then for those who are located outside the Massachusetts area, then they are fully remote, but we still have the opportunity to engage and to bring them into the office periodically, depending on the needs of the business and just for that connection to the organization. So on a regular basis, the remote folks will come into the office, but it's certainly if you're outside MA, it's a remote arrangement. And in my team, we have all facets of that spectrum. So and it works very well.
And does that have an impact on two things? One would be employee growth. Like, do you feel like employees as well if you're just interacting with them virtually? One of the things I totally see the perspective of the employer going, of the employee, which is I don't want to come in because it takes up my commute time. It takes up so much of my effort. Sorry about that. That's my dog. On the other hand, the employers, I've heard this discussion, which is it's hard to know how effective my employees are being. Yes, you can get the project's done, but could the project have been done faster? Can I get a decent idea of am I being as efficient as I possibly can? Has that been a struggle for you at all in terms of identifying the right employees and working with them and choosing the right people?
I think that leading a team who are remote, hybrid, and a combination thereof is a challenge, but it's a worthy challenge, as I said, to access the talent pool and very talented people across the country. And so I think it just takes discipline to make sure that you are engaging with your employees and to provide the opportunities for that engagement. So for instance, in my team, we have a half hour every Tuesday, in fact, this afternoon, and Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, we have a half hour where it's just a standing meeting for the team, and it's a social meeting. And so if you can attend, if you're not busy with other things, come and attend, and we just talk about anything other than work. And it gives us the opportunity to get to know each other better and to in however we can replace that water cooler conversation, or that lunchtime conversation with something that we know is happening every week. Now on the work front, then my folks know that they can contact me anytime. On whether I'm in a meeting or otherwise, I will get back to them and let them know when I can speak, or otherwise, or we use the Microsoft Teams platform at Xerox, and it's got the message facility as they all do. So you can message folks. Do you have 5 minutes to chat? Do you have this? Do you have that? So there's not a great deal of difference that I see in that connectivity. Being available to coming by your desk versus sending you a message on Teams. In fact, in some ways it allows you a little more opportunity to ring fence your time, because you can, somebody's not standing by your desk asking for your time. They're sending you a message saying, can we meet at this time, or when do you have 5 minutes? And you can let them know when you have. If it's now, great. If it's not, you can plan a time. So I think it's a little different. It takes some discipline. But I think that it's incumbent upon us as leaders to make sure that everybody still feels engaged as a team while working in this remote environment, because I don't think it's going away anytime in the future.
I think people are enjoying having the flexibility that they do, but I'm wondering if that changes the dynamic for the leaders. I think it changes. I mean, everyone's talked about the advantages of remote working, and I 100% agree with all of them. But I also think people are ignoring the disadvantages of remote working. In that, I think number one, you lose a lot of the serendipity that goes into just bumping into someone. And sometimes you're just venting, and someone else goes, "Well, have you considered this?" And that doesn't happen as easily. Alternatively, I'm thinking employees lose the opportunity to just casually walk by and say hello to someone else, and that results in new conversations. Or the last one, which is there going to be job dissatisfaction from leaders who are now not only called upon to be leaders at what they do, but in employee management, which was sometimes just not a skill set they developed because they were subject matter experts. And is that something you've faced, or is that more in my head and I'm an old fuddy-duddy?
Wow, how to answer that? No.
The answer is yes. You are an old fuddy-duddy. I'm okay with that.
No, I hear you on that. In it is different, and you do lose that random interaction, if you like. The venting, I think you don't lose, because it just happens. It happens by message instead of face to face. But no, I think it's for leaders. I think part of leadership, and I kind of feel passionately about this. Part of leadership, in fact, the major part of leadership is creating the environment for your team to do their best work. Is the people leadership. You can be as great a functional expert or subject matter expert as you like, but that does not necessarily, and there are plenty of examples where it doesn't translate into great leadership, and sometimes the opposite. Someone who is not as strong as a subject matter expert may be a great leader, because they can provide that environment for the subject matter experts to do their best work. So I think that there are downsides, of course, and the water cooler conversations and so on, definitely. And I think one of the other challenges is making sure people are properly onboarded, because for folks who join a company during the pandemic, join remotely, that takes some additional effort and discipline to make sure that they're onboarded, and that they have the opportunity to meet people who they may not normally meet in their regular meetings. So we have to find other avenues for that, be it a quarterly company meeting that's on site, be it just like a Friday lunch meeting, which we have at Syros, and the management team will rotate their functional areas. We'll speak about what's happening in their area on a rotating basis on a Friday lunchtime, and anybody from the company can join and find out and ask questions and engage. You get opportunities there to at least have an introduction to people you may not have spoken to previously, and then you can take it from there. If you'd like to catch up with them further. One of the things I miss, to be honest, is if I'm honest, is I'm very much a whiteboard ideas, kind of guy, and so that aspect, I think there is some scope where big sort of planning meetings, big strategic meetings, where you might want to whiteboard out your whole plan for a quarter, for a year. That can be important to have face-to-face, to get that dynamic discussion, to be able to see ideas and so on. And you can replace some of that with whiteboard functions online and so on. But to me, having that big picture in front of you and being able to squiggle around on that is very important. But I think those are targeted times when that engagement is important face-to-face. And then, the majority of the time that we spend, can be achieved satisfactorily, and we can excel even in terms of our company goals in a remote environment. We've demonstrated that, baptism by fire in COVID, and so and I think enduring now is going to be the model moving forward.
Very, very cool. I mean, we can keep going. I'm going to ask you one last question, then I'll ask you a few questions to answer that are less structured. Has this changed the importance of HR as you said, the onboarding function becomes so much more important now than previously, where you could sort of continually keep onboarding people. Now it feels like if you don't onboard them properly, you might lose them along the way, because not only are they less connected to the company, but they may not feel as empowered. And now, as you pointed out a little bit earlier, these employees are coming on and saying, I want to be part of something I believe in. And if you take that away from them, that onboarding is a critical component of that process.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think HR has, continues to be central to the employee experience, and a good HR team, has the same importance it had previously. Perhaps the focus and the skill sets that they need to enhance in this remote environment have changed a little bit, and having a little more structure to onboarding, because it doesn't happen necessarily organically just by being in the office. Absolutely, I would agree with you there. That's we've seen a need to apply a bit more structure to that, and also just to the employee experience, providing those opportunities for engagement as well at a company level, not just a team level, is definitely something that HR is taking on board and continuing to enhance in the future.
This is amazing, and we could keep talking about this because I'm fascinated, but we're well over time, as you know. Before we go, I'm going to ask you. I usually do like the 5 questions, but yes. I'm going to ask you much shorter versions of that. The first one, how can people reach you?
You can reach me at apreston@syros.com, or I'm easy to find on LinkedIn.
Yes, you are. You are the one and only Ashley Preston on there, which you got that URL for, so kudos to you. My second and last question to you, like I said, I'm going to keep it short, was what would be your takeaway message for today? We talked about a few things, but yeah.
Takeaway message for today. Okay, well, I think that's 2 messages. One, Project Optimus is coming, and we have to think about it. We have to think carefully about drug development in phase 1 and dose escalation, dose determination. And it has to be a holistic approach. And the second part is to make sure that when you want to attract employees, you are truly demonstrating the values of your company. The values and the value proposition of your company to candidates, because candidates are savvy and the market is competitive. So make sure you live what you live by your words.
Awesome. Thank you again for coming on, Ashley. This was amazing, and we can't wait to have you back soon.
Thank you, Darshan. I'll see you next time.
See you soon.